Hey everyone, this is your OG, Original Gamer, and this is another Godforge video. Today we are going to learn how game theory isn't just a bunch of fancy math, but it's the art of outsmarting everyone. From your fellow Godforge gamers to Batman battling with the Joker. We are going to finish up with some powerful insights into how to know when to build width versus depth in your Godforge account. You're not going to want to miss that at the end, and it's straight from the mouth of Sun Tzu himself. Alright, so let's break it down and take a look at how it can optimize your Godforge gaming experience. We have a good amount to cover in this one, so without hesitation, let's optimize. Alright, what is game theory, right? Oh, before we jump in, just a quick leak, okay? This was a leak that we confirmed on the Discord server, that the confirmed number of champions in the game, in the build right now, is 109, and we were tracking 112, so as always, your OG was slightly ahead, even of the game's developers. So anyways, on to game theory. What is game theory? Game theory is the science of strategic decision making. If you think of life as a giant game where your choices depend not just on what you have to choose from, the variety of choices, but also on what others might do. So here's an example we see as our background. Anyone who recognizes it, it's the Dark Knight fairy scene, and each of these two groups or two fairies were given this choice with a detonator to blow up the other. Should you blow up the other fairy first, right? Well, spoiler. And we'll get into this later, but Nash's equilibrium theory will tie into it. No one benefits from changing strategy or blowing up the other fairy. Actually, the best strategy is no one to do anything, because that saves Gotham. So we'll touch on that a little bit later in the video, but we just wanted to get you thinking along these lines. All right, so now we will talk about the prisoner dilemma. Okay, so this is a common thought example used in game theory. In this example, we're gonna call it snitches get stitches. Okay, so there are two criminals and they're being interrogated separately. If both of them stay silent or cooperate, then they only get 1 year in jail. Okay, if one of them rats or defects, then they go free, while the other one gets 3 years or more years. And then, if both rat, then they both get a certain sentence that's longer than if they had both stayed quiet. Okay, so you can see that in the game theory. If they both betray, they serve 2 years. If one betrays and the other stays silent, then the one that betrays goes free, and the one that goes silent gets 3 years, which is the longest term in this. And then if one stays silent, the other betrays. So you can see that, unfortunately, this model makes it such that the dominant strategy is betraying or defecting if you are looking at it from your individual rationality, your own personal perspective. The only strategy that makes sense is, if you stay silent and they betray, you're getting all these years, he's going free. If you stay silent, he stays silent, you still serve a year. So the choices that are in front of you make it such that betraying the other individual is most advantageous, and you're going to choose that more often. So this explains why trust can be so hard, because if they mutually work together, then it works better for them, but this fear that they're going to betray and it's going to set you up for a worse situation is a driving factor into giving them up. Obviously, police know this. They play off of this as well. So that is individual rationality if they're looking simply at what is best for themselves. But collective irrationality, if both of them were to defect or to rat, then they each get a higher sentence than if they were both to be mutually silent. So if you look at it from a collective irrationality, what's better for us as a collective whole, prison or criminal population as a whole, then collective irrationality says that it's better for you to both remain silent and only serve 1 year than it is to both betray and have to serve an extra year. So it just depends on whether you're looking at things from your own individual perspective or from a collective perspective. The key insight here is that self-interest can undermine group dynamics. Humans may oftentimes choose to, you know, screw you over let's win together. So what I'm saying to say this is that you have to understand your probabilities in order to even attempt to shift behavior. So you have to have a nice starting realistic expectation, and it has to take into account human nature's strengths and weaknesses. So you want to align people so that their individual rationality, their individual what's best for them, also aligns with the collective irrationality. But oftentimes those things differ or conflict, and that is where your choice lies. Okay, so we are going to move to our solution. Okay, so in the 1980s, a computer scientist named Robert Axelrod, which computer scientists, okay, pocket protector, I'm sure, but Robert Axelrod sounds like he, you know, moonlights as a lead singer of a grunge band. Anyways, this is way off the point, but this was in the 1980s. This computer scientist, Robert Axelrod, he ran a prisoner's dilemma tournament, right? This folks, this was before we had fun games. We just created tournaments and things like this to compete. It was terrible. You didn't want to grow up in that time, you understand? But what was the meta strategy for this prisoner's dilemma tournament, right? We see that trust is hard and the dominant strategy is to betray the other. So what we found was that a meta strategy emerged called tit for tat. You've probably heard of it, but basically the way it is you start nice, okay? You always start out being friendly and nice, and then you mirror your opponent's last move. So if they're nice, you continue to be nice, and then that carries the inertia of the situation where you never really dip too long into that individual rationality, what's in this for me, but you kind of remain focused on the collective irrationality of what's in it for us, like what are we gaining by working together. So this is a common decision point in gaming. We're going to talk about it as we go deeper into this. So you have to look at, okay, am I, you know, going to do what's best for me, or am I going to do what's best for both of us? And of course, that's got to take into account things like how will this action follow me later, and that certainly plays a role. If you're a criminal and you know you're going to be surrounded by these same people for a long time afterwards, even if you so then if you betray them, there's a much bigger cost to that than if you never see them again. But why does this tit for tat strategy work? Okay, well, it's forgiving. It gives second chances. So if you cooperate, so will I. And it even can add an occasional mercy to recover from like misunderstandings. Like, oh, okay, we just had a misunderstanding. Let's reset. It gives chances for that. It's retaliatory. It punishes betrayal immediately. I will do to you what you do to me. It's kind of a golden rule function. So if you're doing things that aren't right, now, I mean, sure, people say two wrongs don't make a right, but by being retaliatory in this way, it gives immediate feedback that, hey, what you're doing is not good. I don't like it, because here, you can feel it yourself. So that creates a shorter fuse between trigger and detonation and allows people to go, oh, okay, I see what I'm doing to you. Hold on, let me either stop or I'm making a conscious choice to keep doing this. This allows you to come across as a pretty straight shooter that makes you easier to predict for people. You're not playing mind games. You're just like, you treat me nice, I treat you nice. It makes things easier when you're building the social components in games. Evolutionary edge that this gives you in Godforge. This is absolutely instrumental in clan or pantheon building, to set reasonable expectations for new members so that they can achieve and build their confidence in their ability to be of a value to your pantheon or your clan. This promotes a greater social cohesion, which improves your gameplay because you're never leaving a gamer behind type of thing, and you're promoting longer and more fulfilling game experiences. In one of our upcoming Sun Tzu Art of War episodes, we'll be discussing knowing when to attack and when not to engage the enemy, employing the tit for tat with 1 to 2 forgivenesses or chances to account for misunderstandings. We can ensure that we're only expending our resources, our mental energy too is a resource, when and where it's most optimized for our account. So we don't want to be having a lot of waste or rework or a lot of like managing people and trying to work with them to get them on board. If they were all just on board, it's a lot less mental energy for you to exert. So that is where this gives you an edge in the game. So the opposite of this is to think in terms of zero-sum games, okay? Like I drink your milkshake. Like one player's gain equals another player's loss. Okay, so like poker, chess, Hunger Games, these are all kind of examples of zero-sum games. There isn't really a solid second place. Where is that tying to real life? Job promotions, dating apps, right? Like you're not choosing two people for the job or two people to date. So this exists in the world. And there's not much in Godforge that I see that's zero sum, except for like tournaments and event leaderboards where rewards would only be for the top spots. Of course, you can't have two winners, so that's where you're seeing zero sum. But what is the secret sauce to zero sum? Okay, well, in the movie The Beautiful Mind, which you see here, Russell Crowe's character, John Nash, is discovering his theory and his theory of equilibrium while he's at a bar with his friends, and there's so many of them and there's so many girls, and they're trying to figure out how to cooperate versus compete so that they all wind up pairing with somebody without their competition ruining it. So what I thought was interesting about this is in my Pantheon or clan, I'm going to probably give out a title or a badge or folks to anyone in the clan who is considered a meta breaker, because this is a meta breaker. It's something that changes the meta and changes the strategy, because what Russell Crowe's character, what John Nash's theory of equilibrium talks about is that no player can benefit by changing strategy if all the others keep theirs. So if everyone holds to the meta, then there's no benefit in changing your strategy. However, if the meta changes, or if someone's willing to be a meta breaker, and that's where I think that title and badge could be kind of cool, as somebody who introduces either new combinations or something that is a counter to the current meta, that is a cool way to call them out, I think, in the Pantheon or a clan, so that they feel recognized for that enormous contribution. An example just in everyday life, right? Traffic lights. If everyone were to just suddenly decide I'm going to run every red light, it would be chaos. But because we all stop at red lights and agree to that, we have equilibrium. So this is a chaos versus order, but really order is just how do you organize the chaos into a useful form, right? And that's what Nash is talking about in this. So you need to know, when is the meta changing? Well, your OG is going to provide you with forward indicators, so you should subscribe and set your notifications to on so you don't miss a minute of this info and get behind the curve in Godforge. All right, moving forward, game theory and nature. Even animals use game theory. We're going to talk about the hawk-dove game. Hawks fight for resources, right? They're predators. They tend to be more competitive. But predators also have cooperative packs and are not always solo. So this ties into something that I think will be really important to discuss. So drop your comments as well, what you think. But I'm discussing playing solo versus playing in groups and clans and social features. Now, in Call of Duty, I play solo a lot because I found myself dying so many times to go back and save teammates from like unwinnable situations in Al Mazrah or whatever in the big giant worlds. I would always go back to help them. Marines just don't leave people behind, and I would die like a lot of times doing that because they'd gotten themselves into a terrible situation. So a lot of times I switched and would start playing solo just so and that helped my progression. That helped me move forward. Now, on the other hand, in Raid Shadow Legends, you lose out big time if you don't have a clan or a higher level clan, because you're not getting near the kind of daily rewards that you would otherwise. So I think Godforge is going to follow in that same vein, and that you really need to be thinking of your Pantheon strategy now. Will you start your own? Will you be hunting for a top performing one to join? Let me know in the comments below. What are you thinking? Are you thinking about starting your own Pantheon? Are you looking to just join one? You don't want the responsibility of running it? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Another cool title or badge that I want to give away to folks in my clan or Pantheon, and I think could be a game-wide thing as well, like a recruiter badge or a recruiter title. Let's say you've invited more people to the game than like 90% other people, like you're the top 10% recruiter of getting new people into the game. That would be a cool badge or title that they could display, or it could be a banner around their character or whatever, their main character. So I don't know, something like that is a nice thing to promote. So that's your hawks. I think doves, they're not fighting for those resources. They're more likely to share and retreat and kind of like work together. But so so prey tends to be more cooperative, but they can get competitive when food and resources are scarce. So really what you're looking to do on your team is build a mix of hawks and doves, because both strategies survive. So from an evolutionary standpoint, the most stable strategy is a combination of the two. And why is that? Well, if everyone was a hawk, then the doves could sneak in kind of easy while the hawks are all fighting, and there's no fighting cost. So the doves can really get away with it. But if everyone's a dove, then the hawks take over. There's no balance. So balance is really the key here. All right, so we're moving into replicator dynamics. Copycats rule, right? We all know that when the meta, it's something meta gets out there and is really useful, this is how basically replicator dynamics is the math modeling that tracks how fast these metas spread through a population. So obviously the fitter the strategy in Darwin terms, or the higher the payoff that you get for using the strategy, the faster it's going to reproduce and spread. So we can measure that speed of adoption and be able to give you forward-leading indicators on what meta shifts are likely to actually not fizzle out and become a real change, so that you don't get ahead of yourself and make moves that wind up being obsolete before you can finish them. So for instance, copycats rule, let's say tit for tat, where you cooperate first and then mirror the other. Maybe that earns more friends and helps you do better in the game than always defecting to your own interests. So it becomes the norm. That's how metas shift. It's just the smartest strategy. All right, let's move to game theory. How to win at life using game theory. So here's an idea, a thought-provoking idea. It's called the ultimatum game. You have $100, okay? You have a person across from you, and you have to offer them a certain amount of that $100. And the only way you get to keep the money is if they don't reject your offer. If they accept your offer, then you get to split the money at that split. But if they reject your offer, nobody gets anything. So obviously you would think 50-50, right? It's a fair split. Humans hate unfairness, right? Well, it's true. Offers below $30 of the 100 often will get rejected. So the life hack is always trying to figure out just enough to give to avoid rage quitting, and then also provide maybe some unexpected or small bonus in another currency or something that isn't directly tied to that same money, that is emotionally targeted, in that it shows how well you understand their emotional needs as a customer. So what is that? It takes observing closely of the atmospherics, which we used to call atmospherics of your game population. So while I was in the Marine Corps, I went to Jordan for a operation, and I worked out of the embassy doing human intelligence work, and civil affairs missions, where we go out into the population plain clothes, no weapons, and we simply engage the population in conversation and try to gain intel into what is the sentiment and atmospherics of the people. Are they upset? Are they happy? Are they, all the things that would give us forward-leading indicators as to what they may do if we do this, or what they may do if we do that. So this gets into another thought example called the stag hunt. Two hunters can either team up to catch a stag, i.e. a big reward, or they can individually hunt rabbits, small, safe reward. So this brings me back to the Oregon Trail. Do you hunt the buffalo and risk not being able to carry all the meat? Or do you hunt just what you need in terms of squirrels or smaller prey? How efficient? What works better for you? Real life application here in Godforge, do you use all your resources chasing a large reward that you may or may not achieve? Or do you progressively build up strength over time by hunting smaller rewards that you can achieve with almost certainty? These are the choices the game is going to present you with. So the takeaway from it is you really have a choice between high-risk teamwork and safe selfishness. That's the delineation I see. So may the odds be ever in your favor to not get betrayed. Marines specialize in high-risk teamwork because oftentimes we're a part of training teams with foreign entities, and that shows, it's better to work through the issues and the challenges of high risk teamwork than it is to go save selfishness. And in order to do it, you need to be present. You need to be included in the conversation. So that means, you know, being in the chat, being in the game, to get your Godforge experience as optimized as it can be. It's about showing up. And when you show up, it's about being prepared when you do, and then iterating and improving to whatever level you see. All right, so evolutionary game theory, outsmarting your opponent tomorrow. In nature, survival isn't just strength. It's strategy. It's not brains over brawn, it's brains powering brawn. So while defecting and betraying might seem like a no-brainer, it's everyone for themselves, you know, we also know that from historical experience that many hands make light work and that two heads are better than one. So when stress is applied and you feel like defecting, just remember that to play smarter means to play together, to build the community of gamers that make playing the game fun. There's nothing worse than a lonely metaverse, my friends. Does the idea of interacting with other people scare you more than a fight with Raw? You know, I get it. I totally understand. You just have to push yourself outside your comfort zone slowly and as you feel you can by connecting with others and being a part of a pantheon. This will maximize your game experience fully. So remember, tit for tat. Start nice, mirror the opponent's last move, and this works to counter the prisoner dilemma. Okay? And this is also found in nature as well. So the lesson is be a strategic saint. Okay? All right, so we are going to switch to networking as a game. We are going to talk real quickly about the Breas paradox, where they basically added a road, and by adding a road, it created more traffic. Okay? It's counterintuitive. It's what we call a mind puck. So sometimes adding a road makes traffic worse. It's counterintuitive or the opposite of what you would think. For example, a new road is added and Waze redirects everyone to this secret shortcut. Boom, you have gridlock all of a sudden. In South Korea, they decided to close a street actually, and in fact traffic improved, right? So there's sometimes elements to game theory that are counterintuitive, and you have to be willing and ready to see them. So the game theory hack is be the driver of your account who doesn't only follow Waze, right? Or doesn't only follow the way everyone is going, but who knows when it is wise to follow Waze, but always knows it's about being appropriate. Okay, so why does this all matter? Game theory isn't just for Nobel Prize winners, it's for anyone who wants to win at life. Whether you're negotiating a race, swiping on Tinder, or surviving a zombie apocalypse, you need to think strategically. So now we are going to shift gears here, and this is what you've been waiting for, our spotlight on building your account like a general, complete with quotes from Sun Tzu, our favorite ancient general. Okay, so building account width versus depth in Godforge. You need to be able to master your account's width, which is your diversity of your roster, and your depth, which is how maxed out any one of those characters are. This is very much like balancing an army's scouts and elite forces. So here's how to strategize like a warlord. When should you build depth or expand your roster's diversities? What roles do you need? That's the question you should ask. Sun Tzu says, know your enemy and know yourself. You can fight 100 battles without disaster. So you have to be looking at that roster, and you have to be understanding where your gaps are and what is the pieces you need to be able to progress. So in the early game, you need to prioritize width because you just don't have a lot of characters, obviously. So you need to do what you can to get more champs in each faction so you can unlock the 4 stars of the different faction areas, and of course probably unlock better rewards and more characters. That's a big time where you're going to want to add width. But you're also going to want to be careful that you don't get overwhelmed by that width and that you don't have a good way of prioritizing who to go deep on. We'll get more into that after. Another time you should prioritize width is when there's a new meta shift, or champs are released into the game for free, or you have to achieve them by an event. That can be a time when you want to prioritize width and go after new champions versus continuing to improve the ones you have. Sometimes if you're getting stopped up in dungeons or battle areas, you may lack the key roles, and so you want to add width to be able to do that. Arena battles, maybe you have the opportunity to add a functionality or a piece that you've never had before, and it will change the way your team operates. So yes, adding that width can make sense as long as it fits in your strategy. And like I said, for limited time events, let's say they require a specific faction or class or something for bonus rewards, it can be worth it to add width to be able to go into those areas and compete. For the Alpha Tower, it's unlikely that you're going to want to build out more than 12 champions during the 10 to 11 day testing phase. So you're somewhat capped with your width. And I think that means we're going to be mainly focusing on the depth that we can build with each champ. That's the awakening, the ascending, the leveling, the promoting, the gearing, and the weapons, the imprinting. And I don't know, maybe giving them an attaboy and wishing them good luck. But the pro tips here, you want to do your best to look for and to farm flexible units. Heroes that have dual or triple roles. I mean, this is pretty common knowledge if you play Raid Shadow Legends. You want more flexibility is better than less. Very niche roles can be tricky when you have such a limited focus for something like the Alpha Tower. So you're going to want to really prioritize dual and triple role players who are very strong. Also, you're going to want to prioritize synergy over individual strength. If you think of like an all-star team, you're going to want not necessarily the all-star team, but you're going to want the best team that will work together rather than a single lone carry. When do you build depth? When do you hyper invest in key units? And how do you identify and flag champions for promotion? This will be what we talk about here. Sun Tzu says, the general who wins a battle makes many calculations in his temple before the war is fought. So that translation is a maxed out hero can sometimes solo carry battles, right? But as champions pile up, how do you prioritize them? Do you have a wish list? Do you remember to halt progress on a champion that you do have in the build process when you suddenly realize, hey, I just received a new Lego who does this better? Do you have a process for doing that and recognizing and dropping people in priority? Look for tools to come as we get closer to the global launch. EuroG will be providing you with tools to do this, if none are out there that exist. So you should prioritize depth in the Alpha Tower when you get stopped up by a level. But before you just go back and start drilling down and increasing gear levels and all this, you have to identify what attribute was most likely responsible for me being stopped. Was it my speed? Did the enemy get out in front of me and I never was able to recover? Was it my accuracy? I needed to land this debuff and it didn't land. Was it attack? I got ahead and I landed stuff, but I just didn't have enough attack to get over their defense or HP. Or was it defense, HP, or res, where you're like, I had the speed, accuracy, and attack, but they hit me once and I was done. So you need to identify what it was that failed you most likely, and maybe it's a combination of one or two things, and then start to build depth around that area. But don't go too fast because there's a threshold that you want to get over, and then anything more than that is getting into the realm of overmaxing, which is waste. So, for instance, like if speed only needs to be 205 and your speed is 350, maybe you could give more accuracy or more health or more defense, and that would be better. So we don't necessarily want to go more is better in every instance. We want to be appropriate. Let's say we're doing arena climbing. A maxed out champ with fully leveled gear can do this type of ability that I want. This ties into having a dream board to show like what are my ideal team comps. Like if I could just go through the index and pick my arena team, what would it be? How cool would it be to have like an area inside your area that you upgrade your champions that's just a dream board showing your ideal team compositions that you'd like to have, that you're working towards, so that you don't forget them. So then when you go in there every day, you're like, right, we're working towards this. That's right. Because a lot of times you may pick up the game, once a day, and you do a lot of other things. So it's cool. It would be cool to have a little dream board that shows like, these are the champs I'm working towards, or the ones that I want that I don't have or I need for this team. All right, resource bottlenecks. Let's say you're drowning in XP potions, but you lack ether crystals, okay? So you need to look at that as it's going to impact your ability to prioritize depth. But what I would say is you want to focus on 1 to 3 promotion paths at a time. If you're trying to promote 4, 5, 6 champions at the same time, it becomes very difficult for you to keep up to date on every last detail for those sort of builds. You got to think like you're triaging it like an ER nurse. You're just putting that, lipstick mark on the forehead. Is this one worth pushing? No, yes, and be really, kind of tight with that. You want to make sure you're only focusing on 1 to 3 key champions at any time that you're building or building depth on. In late game raids, you may find specific bosses with that need hyper specialized damage or certain survivability builds or strategies. So here's where you want to become sort of a brain surgeon and you want to specialize. But that's not going to be immediate. But that is another place where you're going to want to prioritize depth. Lastly, signature skills. Unlocking a hero's ultimate ability will change the game's dynamics. So this is what we would call a force multiplier, or like these ultimates, the best 4 champion ultimates chained together that you can create. So with that, we are going to move into so this is the idea of having your dream board of your characters. This is just a Mario Kart, but maybe these top 3 areas are the only ones that you are paying attention to, but having a nice clean way to look at it and see what champions you have and which ones you want to promote sooner versus others is helpful. And then this is talking about force multipliers. And what is a force multiplier? So a force multiplier enhances your existing power without requiring proportional resource investment. You get more for less. Examples include synergies and mechanics that multiply damage or increase survivability or resource gains. So in the Marine Corps, some examples of force multipliers are massing of your fires, advanced communication abilities, or stealth, your ability to disrupt technologies and move undetected. Some key categories of force multipliers that we're looking for in Godforge, obviously character and team synergies, so skill combos, and things that are, AoE or auras or synergies that will help all the team members are going to be helpful. Any kind of faction resonance, like if you run 4 heroes of the same faction, you can do this, it gives you that. We've seen that very briefly, so having enough faction members to do that will be important. And then looking through the index to really get an idea of which faction members would be able to possibly do fill the right roles, and then going for them. Gear set bonuses are another thing that will play into synergies, and that we just don't know enough. Other meta mechanics include crowd control chains, ways of maintaining control and debuff and turn meter control over enemies. And then lastly, resource amplifiers. So if you get double drops from doing raids or things that will accelerate your progression, you'll also want to prioritize those. They're force multipliers as well. There's some things we learned from raid. A level 60 hero with maxed out talents beats 6 level 50 heroes with maxed out talents. So there is value in pushing your damage dealer to the highest level as soon as you can. But I will also talk later in the video about what I think your priorities should be. So don't go anywhere for that, because I think in Godforge you're going to want to prioritize just slightly different. So stick around for that. Another raid lesson we've learned is a 5-star hero with mythical gear outperforms a 6-star hero with mediocre gear. So the type, quality of your gear, and the appropriateness of your gear is going to probably still be of value. So for support champions, you may not have to rank them all the way up to 60. If you're putting a good enough set of gear on them, you might be able to get away with that, as we saw in raid, but we'll have to see. So the art of balance is Sun Tzu's hybrid approach. Our phase-based strategy is this. Early in the game, you want to focus on 70% width and 30% depth. That just makes sense. You don't have a lot of champions yet, so you have to add the width in order to be able to do things you need to progress through stages of the game. So you're unlocking faction coverage and you're discovering basic synergies. Now, that is for the full global launch. If we're talking about the Alpha Tower, what your first early game in the Alpha Tower, you're going to be focusing on building high depth, and rather than width, you're going to be focusing on high depth on 4 to 6 key role players, so that you can climb as early as you can get into that climb as early as possible. So Alpha Tower is going to be a different approach, but the width and depth ratios I'm discussing are more for the global launch and the full game. So then once you move into the mid game, you're going to be looking at like a 50-50 width to depth ratio. You're really trying to refine 2 to 4 core teams, and you're ascending your S tier characters. Now in the Alpha Tower, once you've got that 4 to 6 person team maxed out, then you can begin to add width. Or if you become stopped at a point, I would add width with the kind of character you need to get past that specific point alone. Then as we move into the late game, your width to depth ratio moves from like 30% width building to 70% depth building, as you don't have more width to keep building for the most part, as you get a majority of the characters and you're really just building each of them out to their max. So the focus is max meta carries and builds for leaderboard and endgame PvE and PvP play. In the Alpha Tower, you're going to want to go deep on new additions that may help you in that end game boss, but you really got to skip everything that isn't great because you don't have the time or resources, it looks like, to give everyone a fair build. So resource allocation. With resources, you should use your overflow energy on hero shard farming levels in the Alpha Tower or areas of the game where ether stones, which seem to be the highest value currency, can be received so that you can pull and add champions or add multiple copies to champions. That's a depth resource, but also a width resource. A depth resource, spend premium currency on gear, ascensions, awakenings, and imprintings based upon your promotion list and your priority of which characters should get each of these first. And that depends on the impact that having it will do for that character's skill sets and abilities. Your OG will be providing you with an offensive, defensive, speed, control, and healing revive war, WAR. This stands for wins over replacement and is a metric to help you know how much better this character is than the baseline replacement character would be. This tool will help you prioritize your champion promotion list in a way that makes sense and condenses a mountain of information into 5 general categories of skill. All right, Godforge specific tactics. So, Pantheon synergies. You should want to build width around your clan's Pantheon bonuses. For instance, as I mentioned, 4-character teams. You're going to need a 4-character team for pretty much all 9 factions. So that's 36 faction champs alone that you'll want to build over time. Your event cycles. You want to project and save resources for events or Pantheon versus Pantheon fights. Places where you can double or triple dip. So you can farm new heroes and upgrade existing ones from your prioritized wish list and promotion list. So you want to always be looking to do more with less. Ascension walls. So we're going to notice that we're going to want to stop investing once a hero hits a certain threshold or material wall. For instance, let's say as the speed is over 206, we are now faster than any opponent we're going to face, and we're good. To have speed go to 290 might not have any incremental benefit, and therefore we want to stop just over the threshold and then pivot to width and pivot to other areas, adding width to that character as well. So we want to be sure though that we honestly build sufficient depth first, because a lot of times that's not as much fun as pulling new champions is. So if we stop short of building out the depth for a champion because we run off to a shiny object of a new champion, we can find ourselves kind of trapped between mid-game and end-game where we didn't ever fully build out some of these other champions, and then when we go to throw them in, we expect them to work like a fully blown out champion, and they're just not. Okay, so how we incorporate things like our promotion and our wish list will help us with this. In the Alpha Tower, here's what I think you're going to want to prioritize in the roles. And this, I touched this in more detail in another video, but I think the 1, 2, like either of these could probably be in the first place, second place. Obviously, everybody knows you got to build your damage dealer to 60. That's like the biggest thing. But I'm thinking that your healer, reviver, bad A, buffer, kind of like your A gunner in the fire team, might be the most valuable for you to, who puts up shields and heals and revives and just helps the team stay afloat. That might be the most powerful to build. And then you're going to be building your damage dealer anyways, because you're going to be using them in every fight. So I'm going 1, 2 in that direction, with 3 being your control champ and your speed debuffer, because I don't think you're going to immediately have enough accuracy in your builds for this to be the first priority. I think third priority is fine. It's still very early on, but I think having defense and healing set up very first, then damage dealing second, then control and debuffing third, and then your tanky team leader who's like your speed booster or your turn meter booster or provides some unique force multiplier. That's your fourth champion you're looking for, because you may not get that champion right away. Okay, so after you have these 4 champions built and running, again, speed, always giving them the first move, enough attack to kill the enemy in a timely manner, and then enough survivability to where they don't get wiped out. Then you can start adding width and looking at, for instance, other forms of damage like poisons or burns or max HP, so you can prepare for upcoming boss dynamics that you haven't encountered yet. You also are going to want to look at unique control functions like freeze or fear that you might need to pass through certain tower thresholds. So champs 1 through 4 we talked about. Champs 5 through 10, I would say you should look at 3 different types of damage and 2 different control function champs in champs 5 through 10. Then lastly, champs 10 through 15, I would say adding another bad A buffer with other buffs would be useful, and another tanky team leader with another force multiplier. And then the last 3 spots, I only think you're really going to build 12, but the last 3 are alternate spots to hedge against possible boss mechanics that might be more rare, less likely to be seen, or if you get champs you just can't pass up on having and building, we'll say 15 is the max, but I honestly think it's going to be something closer to 12. So, so that is where we are going with force multipliers. And here's Colin Powell's perpetual optimism is a force multiplier. And I agree with that. So, what are some common pitfalls? Well, we go chasing every new hero, or we focus on pulling new heroes, gaining width, when really what our account needs is depth. We need to build the champions. And so a lot of times we bankrupt ourselves in terms of resources chasing a new hero or width when that's really not what we need. This won't be as big of a problem in the Alpha Tower, I think, because if you farm too low a level, I mean, maybe if you're like out farming too low of a level trying to get this champ you want, you might miss out on the momentum of pushing a higher level. But the sooner you nail down your team in the tower, it seems the sooner it's going to be easier to accomplish the mission. So that is going to be the balance you're going to look to strike. Another pitfall, overcommitting to meme builds. So like, okay, this cool idea is out and you got to build Dagonet this way with this accuracy and speed and blah blah blah, but you can't get too wrapped around the axle. This obviously not applicable for alpha, but like for your arena maybe, and like you can't get wrapped around the axle on certain memes and try to make it happen if you just don't have what it takes to do it. Always be looking at your account and trying to find innovative ways to do what you can do with what you have. Don't forget to ignore like faction guardians or places where unused heroes can boost your stats. And have a plan for using all of these resources, including multiple champions or different types of food champs. Know how to use them in their best, most efficient conversion, and have that set out already, knowing what your plan will be. So quick decision trees. Let's say you get stuck on the campaign or a dungeon. Build depth to help you ascend your carry. A new area is unlocked. Build width. Farm 1 or 2 niche heroes that can help you take on that new area. Arena meta shift. Well, you need to build width in adding a new champion possibly, or build depth in champions that counter the meta. So by mastering width and depth, you'll dominate Godforge just like Sun Tzu commanding the battlefield. Adaptable, efficient, and always 3 steps ahead. Now go forth, General, and may your Pantheon reign supreme. And for a deep dive on which heroes to prioritize, subscribe to this channel and check out our tier list that we're putting out closer to July. All right, final thoughts. So we went pretty deep here on game theory and how to apply the work of John Nash and others to optimize your gaming experience. We also went into Sun Tzu's combat lessons to share with you how best to know when to build width and depth in your Godforge account. I hope you found this informative, and I recommend that if you have time, scroll through my earlier videos to build your Battlefield IQ to its highest level possible. If you aren't subscribed, well, there's step 1. And we'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care of yourself, and remember, play smarter.